Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Charles Ejekam. I'm the chairman of the Agric Export Trade Group of the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce. You are welcome to today's event. I want to start by tendering an apology for us starting a little bit behind schedule. But I'm sure that from now we'll keep to the timeline. I'm equally pleased to physically welcome all of us in attendance. And for those of us who are virtually attending the event, I want to welcome you on behalf of the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce. I'm equally pleased to recognize all council members of the chambers and the ESCO members of the chambers. I want to equally recognize the presence of our president and the chairman of council of Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, in the person of Mrs. B.C. Adeyemi. Madam, you're welcome. Thank you for your presence. Today's event, we are going to extensively discuss the issues surrounding investment opportunities in the Nigerian agri-business sector. And we have distinguished Nigerians with who are well vested in that space to help us do justice to this topic. We have in our midst our distinguished Madam Mrs. Ndidi Okonkwo-Uneli, MFR. Madam, you're welcome. She's one of our guest speakers. And we equally have Mr. Thomas Olorebe, the GMD of NOSA Group. Mr. Thomas, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. At this juncture, we will please appeal to you to rise for us to take the anthems of Nigeria and Britain. Please. Thank you. our sponsors, Crusader International Limited. Crusader, thank you for the sponsorship, and Red Star Express PLC. And we equally recognize all our esteemed guests, physically present and virtually present. Before we begin, please allow me to state some housekeeping guidelines. For those of us physically present here, please, questions will be answered during the Q&A. You can raise your hands and the microphone will be brought to you. For those joining virtually, if the volume is too low, kindly check your system volume so that you could be heard properly. The event is being recorded and will be available live on our YouTube channel, Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, NBCC. To comments and discussions, use the chat. For comments and discussions, please use the chat icon. You could submit your questions via the Q&A. Only these will be answered during the question and answer session. For posts on social media, kindly use the hashtag NBCC Agric Seminar or NBCC Agri Event. Thank you for listening. At this point, please join me to welcome the President and Chairman of Council, Mrs. Bisi Adeyemi. Please give her a round of applause as she proceeds to the podium. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Charles. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, both here and those joining us online. I welcome you to the NBCC. For those joining us for the first time, you're welcome to visit the other facilities in the plaza. This morning, I'm delighted to welcome you to discuss tapping into foreign investment opportunities in the Nigerian agricultural sector. Agriculture has always played a dominant role in the development and economic growth of Nigeria. For all the high dependency on oil, agri contributes 25% of Nigerians' GDP and accounts for 4% of global GDP. Agricultural activities also provide livelihood to the majority of Nigerians, far more than oil does. Nigeria has an arable land area of 34 million hectares. The country is the leader in various types of agricultural production, including palm oil, cocoa beans, pineapple, and sorghum. It's one of the largest producers of sorghum in the world, next only to the US, and ranks fifth in the production of palm oil and cocoa beans. Nigeria is also a large global exporter in 10 commodities across the world. Undoubtedly, the opportunities in the sector are numerous, particularly in the multi-layered value chain. And today, we're hoping that our experts will share some of these opportunities with us. And in this regard, I'm delighted to welcome subject matter experts to share their experience, like I said. My sister and friend, Mrs. Ndidi Okonkwo-Wuneli, founder Leap Africa, and an expert on social innovation, agriculture, and nutrition. A round of applause for Ndidi. Mr. Thomas Oloriegbe, Managing Director, NOSA Group. You're welcome, sir. A round of applause for him. And of course, our moderator, Mr. Bamidele Ayemibo, CEO, 3T Impex Consulting. Thank you, Mr. Bamidele. I'd also like to thank our sponsors represented here, Crusader PLC and Red Star PLC. Thank you very much for your generosity. A round of applause for our sponsors, please. And of course, to you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking of your time to join us this morning. Please, a round of applause for yourselves. Thank you, and I wish you a pleasant morning.
Thank you, Madam President and Chairman of Council, for that brief welcome remark. At this point, before we invite the first guest speaker, Mr. Thomas Oloriegbe, who is the GMD of NOSA Group, kindly pay attention as I go through his profile. Thomas Oloriegbe has a degree in accounting. He holds a postgraduate diploma in management, a Master of Business Administration from the University of Calabar, and a certificate in advanced management from the IESE University of Navarra in Barcelona, Spain. He is a fellow of the Certified Institute of Cost Management of Nigeria and a graduate of Lagos Business School. He is a polished and seasoned consultant and project manager with over 21 years of work experience in business consulting, mortgage banking, and real estate management. He joined Grand Villas Limited, subsidiary of Nosak Group, as a general manager in 2008 and rose through the ranks to become the subsidiary's chief operating officer in 2014. In October 2016, he was appointed chief operating officer of Nosak Group. By August 2020, he was appointed as a group managing director to oversee all strategic business units of the group. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Mr. Thomas Olorebe to give us his presentation. Thomas, you're welcome. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be in our midst today. And let me also start by thanking the organizers, the DG and my friend Charles, for this opportunity to have this discourse. Now, when Charles came to meet me in the office for this, by way of preambles, it came to me that I hope this is not a talk show, because we have a lot of it, and not much usually come out of this. However, one thing that comes very clearly with those who are practicals, who have had their hand, in the game, is that this subject, it's actually very, very deep. So I will, in the next couple of minutes, as allocated, try to bring up some salient points for discourse, and I want to believe in the course of the question and answer session, we'll be able to dig deep in the business aspect of how we can maximize, our returns in terms of investment in this sector, either locally or even internationally. Let me present the slide, and then I will just run through them as quickly as possible and power brush it. We use the flip. Okay. So the subject this morning is actually trying to talk about how we can tap into the foreign investment opportunities in the Nigerian Agric space or sector, as the case might be. Now, it's important that we lay some few foundations after the intro, and those foundations borders on trying to introduce the subject in a very elementary way so that we all can catch up with the discourse. Agribusiness actually encompasses farming and related commercial activities. And it's no news that all activities along the agricultural value chain becomes something that, if well looked into, has her own investment opportunities, both locally and internationally. But there are some few facts which still speaks to the fact that the sector in our Nigerian economy is still largely underdeveloped. If you look at the 2023 budget allocation, which is just 1.1% of the 21.83 trillion estimate, Agric is just about 228 billion, which all industrial watchers have actually described as a joke if we are going to be sustainable as a nation in terms of cropping and feeding our increasing population. Of course, the population is growing over 200 million, and by 2050, it's estimated will be 450 million, or if not even more. Again, one other thing that strikes one is the contribution of this sector to our national life, or our national economy. The population we have in Nigeria 70% of it engage in agriculture in one form or the other. So there are several opportunities in this sector which investors can tap into both locally and internationally. But before we go into those opportunities, it's important to also highlight the challenges we have. And some of these challenges are quite known to all. The resource shortage, the violent conflicts we keep having, insecurity, outdated system of production, poor value addition and supply chain linkages, issues of poor access to finance, and infrastructure gap, either it's transport or logistics, insecurity, like I earlier said, and then low technology application. These are some of the challenges the sector is currently experiencing. But in view of all these challenges, it's important to note that both the state and the federal government had also tried to come up with interventions, to support and to stimulate the sector. Some of these are the Agric or the Agricultural Promotion Policy, the Nigerian African Trade Promotion Policy, the Presidential Economic Diversification Policy, the Economic and Export Promotion Initiative, and the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which I was part of in Abuja for 6 consecutive weeks with the VP and a lot of all the stakeholders. And then the CBN Intervention Program, and then the creation of Export Processing Zone and the dollar access restriction for the importation of some products, which actually, to us as a group in NOSAC, is why we are now heavily backward integrating in the cassava space and also in the oil palm space, and partnering with one of the states under the, they call it ESOP, Edo State Oil Palm Program. I'll speak briefly on that later, maybe in the course of question and answer, and probably in the course of the presentation. Again, it's important to know that one of the goals of these intervention schemes are actually aimed at creating investment opportunities in the agribusiness sector, which consists mainly of livestock production, which is about 8%, fishery, which is about 3%, forestry, which is about 1%, and crop production, which is the heart of the matter, 88%. Now, when we talk about crop production, indirectly, I'm just referring to food and cash crops, which of course, the major one is cassava, yam, maize, rice, oil palm, and so on and so forth. And so I'll quickly try to talk about investment opportunities in this sector, in the agricultural sector, having introduced us to basically the intervention windows and how it's trying to address the key sectors that could be of relevance both to investors and businessmen. So, on the crop production angle, you could see I have cassava there. And then in this value chain, we refer ourselves in NUSA Group as large-scale processors. We have been in this space for over 20 years, and we refine ethanol. And so, having dwelt in that space over the years, we are highly dependent on import. And so we decide that to substitute these for backward integrating locally. And as I speak to you, investment in that direction is slightly over 10 billion. And more so, we are looking at positioning something that in the Nigerian space, if we rank ourselves, we are one of the top 3 ethanol producers in the country, and one of the top 5 in the oil palm space. So I will be speaking specifically to some of these products, such that from there we can begin to now see how we can take advantage of investment opportunities that have emerged or are also emerging. So if you talk about crop production, which could be, in this case, cassava or any other cash crop, it usually will involve input production and supply, and also farming, which basically these days, if it's going to be meaningful, has to have scale, and therefore it has to be mechanized and technology aided. Agro-processing, which is value addition. And when I talk about agro-processing, for us, if I may also dwell a little bit, we have currently in Lagos here installed capacity of 400,000 liters per day of ethanol. And so that speaks to the size and then the raw material that could feed such plant. And as we speak, we are also trying to build a 150,000 liters per day ethanol plant somewhere outside Lagos. And that speaks to what the kind of feedstock that will be required. One of the things that excited me coming here was that at least I will be able to partner or will be able to collaborate, because I'm looking for farming 20,000 hectares of land in the next 1 year to feed the plant. So with that kind of elephant that is about to emerge, you really need to collaborate for it to be a success. So what I'm trying to say is that if it's going to be meaningful, it has to be of huge scale, or else it will be subsistent and it will not be speaking to the numbers. So in crop production, again, issues of storage is something that we will be discussing. And then the processing in terms of either it's intermediate or derived products, and probably also direct scale. And as I was having conversation with the chairman, I said, after this program or meeting, it will be important we have a stakeholders forum, such that if we pick a product, we should be able to how do I put it now? Dig down to subject experts who will be able to aid, production, either by way of backward integration or by way of, processing or even branding. So that's that on crop production. I'll just speak briefly on livestock, which is also a part of the value chain. You talk about things like mating and hatching, if you are going to livestock, breeding, packaging and storage, transportation, allied products, leather production, meat production, and so on and so forth, direct sales. There are a huge investment opportunities in this. And I remember sometimes at the last Economic Recovery Group plan, some people were actually looking at this sector, just taking it such that this issue of farmer headers, can easily be, reduced or completely taken out of the way. And they were looking at investing in just ensuring that they create storage facilities for meat and then distribute it all over the country, and states which probably don't have the supplies deficient, they'll be able to move it once they produce, and on, and also even in West Africa, as the case might be, and going further. However, how far that has gone is still left to be seen in our polity. Then the other one I also just scribbled here is fisheries, and it also has its own processes, and there are a lot of opportunities there. Either is by way of production and harvesting, processing and storage, or transport, direct sales and export. Because of time, I'll just quickly move to section 2, which I refer to as exportation processes in the agricultural sector. And then with that, I want to just talk about product exportation process. And I have 5 here, which are not exhaustive. It will be necessary if you are going to think of tapping into the foreign exchange advantage of the agric sector, you need to register a brand. You need your company or business needs to be incorporated in the first place. And then you need to register your business with NEPC, that is a Nigerian Export Promotion Council, and ensure that you check out the details of this registration on the website. Number 2, you need to know your target market, understand your target market requirements in your destination country, know the market, regulatory framework, product quality framework, risk assessment, payments, and so on and so forth. The third thing that's also important to note is export plan. You need to draw up your export plan, either for competitors. You need to analyze the market entry strategy. You need to look at logistics planning and the resource requirement, and so on and so forth. The fourth that I have here is proper documentation, which is key. In this instance, contracts, quality assurance, commercial financials, and logistics are very, very, very key. And finally, your logistics plan has to be grand. For us, I remember that at a time, for us to be able to haul our products across West Africa, we needed to invest in logistics, getting trucks, and on, to be able to move our products around. So, and if you are doing that too, issues that bother us on payment methods, terms, due diligence, and so on and so forth becomes key. Again, under the product exportation processes, export pricing plan is important, which must include cost plus and should include all costs, whether local, international, and others. This is a little bit tricky, but you have to ensure that you have people who will be able to look at the numbers for you. Financial plan is also very important. By financial plan, we are talking about your market entry expenses, your working capital management, and payment methods. All these ought to be put together in a very sustainable way. And here I also have legal, and under legal issues that borders on contract, mode of payment, delivery, trade enforcement, dispute resolutions are also key. And then finally, the issue of regulation, whether it's government, by way of export prohibitions, export proceeds repatriation, becomes something that we need to keep an eye on. This has been an area which over time is becoming tough, whether it's the ETLS, particularly in West Africa, and for us to be able to repatriate that has been a little bit tough for some time. Again, I just quickly go to the third session. While, like I said, this is just to stimulate a conversation. Issues that borders on regulatory requirements for agro-processing in Nigeria. And then the first one I have here is, of course, registration with Corporate Affairs Commission. The second one I have here is NAFDAC. Of course, NAFDAC functions. We can always check all that out. And then Standard Organization of Nigeria. But again, the background to export actually, revolves around 3 categories of agricultural products. The first I have here is perishable products. And the second I have here is commodities. And the third is processed products. And for perishables, of course, we know products consumed such as in their fresh states with short lifespan, e.g. fruits and vegetables, are quite on high demand. But like I said, if it is going to be meaningful, it has to be of scale. And then commodities, products used as raw materials and medium shelf life, such as cereals, tubers, legumes, and then processed products, which are value-added products obtained by transforming 2 groups. E.g., for instance, like I did try to introduce what we do, ethanol, cocoa butter, and so on and so forth. Now, there are pre- and post-harvest handling regulations, which we must also be mindful of, like breed selection, harvesting time and method, transportation to processing centers, time lag between harvesting and processing, and process sorting, and so on and so forth. Again, food safety regulations, the way we produce and handle prepared and stored products to prevent foodborne illness becomes also something that we should take cognizance of. Pesticides that resides in food is also key. I remember the other time I was flying and I got to Atlanta, and then I didn't know how that happened, but the ladies here will know sometimes if you are taking a flight and someone says you need to take some beans and stuff like that for the children, and you are wondering that they were smuggled into the park. And so when we got there, they said, step aside, step aside. So I was wondering what could have happened. And then they brought out these beans, and they took it to the microscope, and then they sieved it. And then, those small weevils, then they had, they were dead anyway. So they checked, and then before they asked us to proceed. So I'm saying this, if you are going to export, it's probably like your beans, it shouldn't have weevils. So things that borders on pesticide residue in foods is very key. Food additives, chemical contaminants in food, product traceability, and then documentation to aid isolation and withdrawal of contaminated food from the trade are also very key. And this is an area where most people who don't have informed knowledge just think that, there are opportunities to export, and then you decide to export, all of a sudden the products or the consignment is quarantined, and then eventually you cannot get value for money. Again, issues of market regulation, product grading, either is by sizing or by shapes, or on the other hand, whether it's halal or kosher. When I say halal, now if you are exporting to a Muslim country like Saudi Arabia or Dubai, you need to be familiar with their regulations. Or kosher, maybe it's Israel or any of the Jewish, states. Organic and GMOs too. These market regulations becomes very important if you are considering export. Sanitary, phytosanitary regulations to prevent spread of organisms and harmful plants and animal products is also something that is important. Then environmental regulations, ozone depletion, substances, solid waste management. Of course, it's not a news. Some 2 ethanol companies in recent weeks were shut down as a result of this poor solid waste management and also effluent management. And those things don't come cheap. One of the plants we are building, by the time they gave me the cost estimate for effluent management, I had to think twice again. But we're already in it. It's not going to cost anything less than $10 million just to manage that hydrocyanic acid. If you remember in those days when you have, in those days in the village, if a goat, wanders away and takes that water, it usually gets bloated and then can lead to the death of such livestock. So issues of effluent management become something that is very, very key under environmental regulations. And in our backward integration program, there's this thing called RSPO, Roundtable Sustainable Palm Oil Program, which if you don't key into, you will not be able, in the long run, even if you start milling your oil palm, you will not be able to export to some countries outside the country. Then finally, endangered species. And then I just quickly wrap up by talking about packaging and labeling regulations, content and composition, basically the information that needs to be managed. You need to tell or explain the nature of food, list of ingredients, net quantity, best before date, date and address of manufacturer, instruction for use. think that the small typo error there. Then nutrient declaration and so on and so forth. So these are just by way of power brushing and introducing us to the subject matter that I want to just put across. And then finally, like I said, this is a very broad topic, and it's always important to scale it down by picking some specific products that can address your concerns or address our concerns. From there, be able to now build cases across other products that probably we are now thinking or planning to export. So for the purpose of this discourse, by way of summary, I will be wrapping up and saying that as far as cassava value chain is concerned in Nigeria, the market is huge. And outside the country, in terms of the byproduct that will come from that, is also huge. Ditto for oil palm is also huge, and many other agricultural products. On this note, before we, hang on, I want to say at the question and answer session, I'm sure I've been able to stimulate your thoughts towards likely questions. And in the course of asking those questions, we'll be able to get further clearance. Let me close by saying in forums like this, it's always important to be willing to unlearn and relearn. On this note, thank you for your time and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Fantastic. Let's give him another round of applause. Thank you, Thomas. Very insightful presentation, and I'm sure that some of us are already thinking towards that line. I'm already pressing calculator and seeing what can I do to play along that value chain and extract that foreign exchange value that we also desire. Thank you once again, Mr. Thomas. And I'm sure the virtual participants are taking notes and getting ready for the Q&A. At this point, too, permit me to roll out the profile of our second guest speaker, Mrs. Nkiru Muneli. Sorry, Mrs. Ndidi Munelu. Sorry about that, man. Sorry about that. Ndidi Muneli is an expert on food ecosystems, entrepreneurship, social innovation, and youth development. She has over 25 years of international development experience and is the founder of Leap Africa, the popular Leap Africa, Changing Narratives Africa, and African Food Change Makers. She is also the co-founder of Sahel Consulting Agriculture and Nutrition Limited and AACE Foods Processing and Distribution Limited. Ndidi serves on the boards of the Rockefeller Foundation, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, GAIN, AGRA, AGRA, Nigerian Breweries PLC, Heineken, Godrej Consumer Products Limited, India, the Young Global Leaders of the World Economic Forum, and the Bridgespan Group. Ndidi holds an MBA from the Harvard Business School and an undergraduate degree with honors from Watson School of the University of Pennsylvania. She was a senior fellow at the Mosava Ramani Center for Business and Government at the Harvard Kennedy School, a visiting scholar at Max Bell School of Public Policy at McGill University, an Aspen Institute New Voices Fellow, and an Eisenhower Fellow. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's give her a round of applause as she proceeds to the podium.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here. Congratulations to our president. I know she said congratulations. I've been president and chair for 2 years, but I'm so proud of her. And so proud of you. This is a beautiful establishment, and I actually used to drive by and didn't even know you existed here. So well done. And to the previous speaker, you should be a professor. I think you've done justice to the topic. It was extremely detailed and well researched. So thank you so much. You've made my life easy. So I'm just going to use practical examples, and I have a presentation that has to go through very quickly. Is the presentation on? So I'm just going to be building on the excellent foundation that has already been laid about opportunities in the sector as we proceed. All right, while they're getting the slides up. Okay, thank you. So So I entered the sector because of this picture. How many of you have seen these pictures? They follow me around the world. This is the face of Africa, a hungry child. And the face of poverty, an African woman, farmer. In fact, people used to tell me when I first moved to the United States to go to university, because I was born and raised in Enugu, they used to say, my parents said to me, finish your dinner. There are starving children in Biafra or Ethiopia or South Sudan. And that was the mindset. And this made me angry because it's a single story, right? It's a single story, and it's a dangerous story. Because when you think that Africans can feed themselves and you have to come and feed them, you think they have no agency and they can transform their lives. And so this propelled me into starting and co-founding a number of organizations. And as I talk through them, we'll see why there are investment opportunities and exactly foreign investment opportunities, and why local organizations, like the people represented here, have to take leadership. Because if we don't take leadership of the transformation happening in these sectors, we wake up and we find out the sectors don't belong to us anymore. Have we seen this in many sectors? How can we now leave the food ecosystem to others? So I started Sahel Consulting with my husband over 13 years ago. And we actually started Sahel Consulting when we lived in Senegal under a different name. And there's during the food crisis, 2007, 2008. And many of you might not even have known there was a food crisis then, but there is a food crisis now. And what happens when there's a food crisis is that a lot of multinationals rally around to say there are opportunities here. And in that case, I remember talking to one of my classmates from business school who was at the time affiliated with a company called, I won't mention the company, for security reasons. And he said, we've done so well this year. This is our most profitable year. And they were a trading company and they were doing commodity trading. And I said, but people are not eating at night and you're making money. And I realized we had left this sector to so many other people. We've left them to international traders, to speculators, to smallholder farmers who unfortunately mostly are uneducated, and to foreigners. So this is a space where if you look at the rice value chain, and I'm sure those of you who operate in trading know, and my brother is shipping, you know that a lot of those who control the rice value chain in Africa are not African. And yet we eat rice how many times a day? Growing up, I didn't eat rice every day. What did we eat? We ate yam, we ate cassava. Rice was maybe on Sundays, right? And yes, we can be self-sufficient in rice, but we're not self-sufficient at the moment. And the margins that people make on rice importation in Nigeria is humongous. So I got into this sector saying, why don't people like you and I enter this space? So we started a consulting firm which provides advisory services, value chain analysis, policy consulting, project implementation, and capacity development. And we work across the ecosystem. But our focus is through private sector-led initiatives, and where we believe impact is achieved through collaboration. And that's our focus. And we've worked with a lot of partners. And you can see many of our clients are not local players. Many of our clients are international operators who are coming to the Nigerian landscape. My brother talks about dairy. One of our biggest projects is on dairy. We actually have a project called Advancing Local Dairy Development in Nigeria. It's a sizable project funded by the Gates Foundation, and we work with 5 local companies that are committed to local sourcing. We put these communities of nomadic communities into clusters around the processing areas, and they supply milk every day to these milk processors. So we work in Kaduna with Arla and Saj Foods, in Kanu with LNZ, in Adamawa with Sebore, in Plateau with IDL. And it's been an amazing experience. But there are tremendous opportunities in dairy. We incubated and supported the formation of CODERAN, the Commercial Dairy Ranchers Association of Nigeria, and we've seen the impact of what you can do in dairy. He talked about it. Artificial insemination, there's money. Do you know how much each semen costs, sex semen? Money to be made. And who's coming in? International companies coming in to say, cows are the least productive cows, but we have the fourth largest cattle herd in Africa. We're the largest importer of processed milk. So countries care about us. Who are the countries that care about us? The Netherlands. I won't mention the company that comes from the Netherlands. But when I started making trouble in this value chain, all of them started calling, right? Because what are we prioritizing? Local production, local sourcing. If you're coming in, come and invest in local production and local sourcing. And that's why it's critical that we think about everything we consume in this country, there's money. Everything we currently import in this country, what can we do locally? Yes, we need the technology. That's an investment opportunity. Yes, we need the technical transfer. That's an investment opportunity. And this is my most recent venture. And if there's nothing else you take from this, please go on African Food Changers website, because it's a free community for food and ag entrepreneurs. And I created this organization because I realized so many of us don't have the data that GMD shared. We don't have access to the information. We don't know each other. And we're excluded from the global markets. So what we've created on this portal is a one-stop shop. I say it's a LinkedIn, DevX, and Facebook for ag and food entrepreneurs. And we have entrepreneurs in 37 African countries now using the portal. We have free training, free support. And who's funding this? International organizations who are committed to saying, yes, Africa should feed itself and the world. It's not moving anymore. Can you just move it quickly so that we don't spend... I have 20 minutes. Okay. So we have a community. We have learning and training. We have training on climate. One thing that is hitting our sector in a serious way is climate change. Last year during the floods, 27 states were covered. So rice farms were covered. We have a rice investment in Anambra State in partnership with Sahel Capital called Charis Rice, right? They were covered. And every year it gets worse. So we are offering a free training called Brace for anyone in food and ag to learn how to adapt and mitigate and get ready for climate, but also how to take advantage of climate financing. Because there's tremendous climate financing in the food and agriculture landscape. Why? Because we are one of the largest contributors to climate through greenhouse gas emissions, but we're also most affected by climate change. If there's flooding, if there's drought, what does it affect? Food prices. Malnutrition goes up, right? Our farmers are displaced. So how are we ready? But there's money. The amount of money available, I was at COP27 in Egypt, and I saw unusual suspects from Nigeria. I said, what are you doing here? Oh, there's money in climate. I've come. But you're at oil and gas. There's money in climate. I have come. It doesn't matter the sector, climate. And in the food and agriculture sector, we have to benefit from the climate financing, which means we have to have data on how, through our work, we're reducing emissions, because everybody else is saying they're reducing emissions. How are we reducing emissions? And how can we get compensated for it? Because guess what? People are getting compensated. I remember my early venture into this. I went to Stockholm and I met this Indian guy, and he says, what do you do? Oh, I offer clean cook stoves to rural women in Kenya. And every month, JP Morgan pays me $5 million. I said, what? Have they ever come to see that these clean cook stoves are getting to the women? No. Now, is that a good thing for us? Or that the women are actually using the clean cook stoves? Because it's one thing to give them as gifts, another thing to say they're using it. And you know why they're compensating them? The narrative is women won't use firewood when they have clean cook stoves. But let's ensure that the money is going to those who need it and those who are actually making a difference, not to the charlatans. So there's a lot of opportunity, lots and lots and lots. All right. My slides are not working with me, so I'm just going to move on. Then the third company that was mentioned was Ace Foods. And I just want to use Ace Foods as an example. So Sahel is a consulting firm. We're bringing in investment to transform the ecosystem, right? We're working in seed systems. We're working in dairy. We're working in cassava. We're working in a range of sectors. Africa Food Changemakers is a nonprofit, but it's a tech company in the space. And we're bringing in investments who are concerned about how do we leverage tech and knowledge for entrepreneurs, right? The third is Ace Foods. And why did we start Ace Foods? We started Ace Foods because 40 to 60% of the fruits and vegetables in Nigeria go to waste. 40 to 60%. 20 to 30% of the grains go to waste. Why do they go to waste? Lack of logistics, storage, pack houses, and processing. So most of our food is consumed fresh. And while that's a good thing, on face value, from a health perspective, it is also really, really dangerous because it means that when corn season is over, can you find corn? No. What do you end up eating? Canned corn from Thailand? So you're helping Thai farmers. Meanwhile, when corn was in season, it was spoiling, right? Or even yam. When yam is harvested, we have the season where all of us can afford yam, and then the season where we're complaining because yam is now prohibitively expensive for the average Nigerian. So if we don't process, we miss out on the opportunity to have year-round availability of affordable, available, nutritious food for our people. I love mango, and it upsets me that I can only access mango for 3 months out of the year. How many of you does it upset? So then we have to be getting in dried mango from other parts of the world when we can have mango all year round. So there's technology investment opportunities. That enable us to grow mango all year round, but also enable us to preserve mango all year round. Because in America, they figured out how to have an apple that can sit on your table for 1 year and it won't go bad. How does that happen? It's not only modified, but it's also coated. Now, some of that coating is not good for you, but you can also do it where it's good for you, right? It's all about technology. So we started a company to process food sourced locally, and it wasn't easy. In the beginning, we made a lot of mistakes. We learned the hard way. So maybe but you can see some of our products. Eventually, we introduced spices to the market. And you might say spices, but I still prefer fresh spices. People tell me that all the time. But if you have high-quality preserved spices, they're even more potent than fresh spices. And not only have we displaced some of our imported products, but we're now exporting. And when we started, most people said, I don't trust Nigerian products. Do you understand? How many Nigerians who say they don't trust Nigerian products? But now, our spices, it took 4 years to get into ShopRite. We went from the bottom shelf to now the middle shelf. Why? Why do you think they gave us better shelving? Because imported products started getting more difficult to bring in. And that's another opportunity. Not because they liked us, but because they needed to fill their shelves and our products were moving. But now our products are the cheapest products on the shelves. Why? Because we have built out a local supply chain, because we have built trust in the ecosystem, and because if you source locally, in the long term, when the economic turmoil or the evaluation of your currency, challenges with shipping, global challenges with shipping because of COVID, who stands to gain? The investment in local organizations. And so hopefully all of you are customers of Ace Foods. If you're not, you're missing out. We also have a beans flour, a soya maize, and we just introduced a snack for children. And what gives me the most joy out of all the organizations I've started, because a lot of people see me and say Leap Africa, is actually Ace Foods. Because when I go to the factory, and I go very rarely these days because I'm just now on the board and we have a great team, to see that you provide health insurance to your staff, a warm meal, adult literacy programs, and you can see them improving their lives and their children's lives, that gives me the greatest joy. And the supply chain in agriculture is amazing because there's the farmers, then they're the customers, the distributors, the women who now carry our products who didn't have a job before, who are now entrepreneurs because we started. And this is what an investment. So for me, it's something I'm really, really proud of. And it's just one small business, one investment in the food ecosystem makes a difference. So what are some key lessons? And then I'll end with a call to action. So I wrote a book called Food Entrepreneurs in Agriculture in Africa. I brought copies here. I brought 27 copies. But what are some key lessons? If you're going to invest in this sector, you have to know that it's not an easy sector. It's a complex sector, right? It's multi-layered. I tell people you only make money overnight if you're doing marijuana in agriculture, right? That's agriculture. Or if you're doing commodity trading. But otherwise, this is patient capital. Because if you're building an ethical company that's making a difference in people's lives, you have to expect that you're going to wait to get your money. But you will. And once you start making money, it's consistent. Right? It's consistent because people have to eat. How many times a day? 3. And we want them to be able to afford 3 meals a day. So first, you have to ensure that your investment is demand-driven with measurable value addition. Not what you think people want, but what people really want. You have to leverage technology, data, and innovation. You have to ensure that you're shaping the ecosystem. And the GMD talks about it. You can't enter cassava without shaping the cassava ecosystem because the cassava policy might change overnight and your business becomes obsolete. And we've seen that repeatedly in our country. That's why investment in dairy has a big policy component. We had to get the CBN to talk to the Ministry of Trade and Investment, to talk to the Ministry of Agriculture, to sit down and have one dairy policy. Why? Because they all have different agendas. What is the Ministry of Trade and Investment's agenda? To maximize tariff and quota revenue. Right? CBN, they have their own agenda. I won't get into that. Etc., etc. It has to be cost efficient with dynamic systems and structures, simple, compelling branding, and storytelling for our context. And then finally, you have to build in resilience into your DNA, into your investment DNA, because we're going to have shocks. So you have to be agile, innovative, and you have to be ready to mitigate your shocks. And so all this is captured in the book, and I have practical examples from all over Africa. When I raise my hand, then you know you have to move. And it's actually a really, really, really labor of love. And some of this has been covered. But let me just go back to the financing page. There is financing for agriculture and food. That's the good news. Lots of financing. And there is affordable financing. There are grants, lots of grants. In my book, I profile One Acre Fund. They've gotten over $100 million in grants. And we have them operating right here in Nigeria in grants, not loans. The question is, why are Nigerian organizations not getting these grants? Because we're not telling our story. We're not positioning ourselves. For Ace Foods, we had to tell our story. We sourced from 10,000 farmers. Is it our business to support those farmers? It's not our core business, but you can get funding to build out your supply chain. Many of us don't want to bother. If you're going to ensure traceability, people will fund you. You can get funding to build out your distribution channel. So my brothers and sisters, do not leave this money on the table. If you do anything today, go on affchub.org and search by Nigeria. You'll see all the funding available. There are prizes. There's venture capital. Our sister company, Sahel Capital, manages the Fund for Agriculture Financing in Nigeria, FAFIN, that's invested in quite a few companies. There's crowdfunding. There's convertible debt. There are lots of challenge funds and lots of opportunities. But why aren't we getting the money? Are we transparent? Are we accountable? Do we have governance structures? And that's why our president's work is so important. Do we have a track record? Because the money is there. Can you get it? It's plenty. When I hear about all the programs that are available, it just breaks my heart. So let me round up with a call to action. If there's any crisis we're facing right now in Nigeria, it's a food crisis. We have double-digit food inflation. Egg used to be 700 naira a crate. Today, it's 2,600 naira a crate. So the average Nigerian cannot afford the cheapest protein available. The average Nigerian is eating 101 or 010. How many of you know what that means? Or they're boiling Maggi and using Maggi with rice. Now, when we're malnourished, what does it affect? Our brain. The sense of urgency I feel is that pre-COVID, 30% of our children were stunted. It affects brain development. In parts of Nigeria today, 60%. Now, when children are stunted today, it means stunted populations tomorrow. Because it means we don't have a workforce for the future. Because we're hungry. And there's no reason why we should be hungry. Why? God has blessed us with fertile land and everything we need to move up. So it's really critical that we move up. So let me just round up with my call to action. So a couple of things have to change. Number one, we have to realize the opportunities in this sector. And the best and the brightest of us have to enter the sector. We have to tell positive stories about the sector, not just the war stories. We have to prioritize local organizations when you come in to invest. And as the British Nigeria Chamber, when the British government comes in to invest, say to them, which local organizations are you working with? Let us insist that we prioritize local organizations. Do you understand? So that we reclaim this sector as ours. I always tell seed companies coming from the US, I'm like, we have 80 seed companies here. Don't donate seeds. You're going to distort the market. Work with the seed companies. Invest in them. So let's change our narrative. I've also started doing a lot on changing narratives about Africa. And that's my mantra. Nowadays, when I go anywhere, I don't say terrible stories. Look at the funding data. Of $9 billion from U.S. foundations that funded sub-Saharan Africa, only 6% went to local organizations. 6%. So other people are saying they're working here. They're carrying our money and spending it there. So when we're talking about investments and foreign investments, let us prioritize who? Local organizations. That's me and you. All right. So as I round up, I just want to say that we also have to tell positive stories. That my current mantra is on telling positive stories and how Africa has contributed to the global food ecosystem and why they need us. The New York Times just wrote an amazing article about South Sudan and said the world is going to suffer because gum arabica comes from Sudan. How many of you knew? And gum arabica is a very important ingredient for what? Beverages, pharmaceuticals, and Sudan is the number one producer of gum arabica. But when the world thinks about Sudan, what do they think of? War, poverty, hunger. I love this story of okra. How many of you know the word okra? Do you like okra? Did you know that okra is an Igbo word? The whole world has adopted. I'm proudly Igbo. So next time you say okra, think about proudly Igbo Ndidi. Now, okra was found in the Annals of Virginia in 1967 as a word from the Igbo people, brought by the slaves in their body parts. The seeds were then grown. So today you have gumbo eaten in New Orleans and seafood okra eaten here. And they're almost identical. Right? So I love to tell people, you're eating our food. You're calling our name. It's no longer French fries alone. Do you understand? Or croissant. It's okra. The same with Coca-Cola. Did you know that Coca-Cola was made from cola nuts from West Africa? The inventor of Coca-Cola calls it Coke. That's why it's Coca-Cola. Right? So if you've had a coffee or a Coke today, you have Africa to thank for it. That's what I tell them on the global stage. Because coffee was born in Ethiopia, and 18 countries in Africa produce coffee. So we have to start telling positive stories so that people realize, so I say no cola without West Africa's cola nuts. Right? We have to start reclaiming our role in the food ecosystem. Because if we can fix this ecosystem, if we can invest in it, it's about the future. Let's build a legacy that we can all be proud of, right? By getting the best and the brightest into this food ecosystem, bringing in the resources it needs so we can feed ourselves and we can feed the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We can do better by giving a better round of applause. That was excellent. I'm sure that we will need maybe like a few minutes to digest all the invaluable points and insights Mrs. Ndidi had shared with us. Quite insightful and quite educating. So at this point, I would invite the moderator to take over the podium to take care of the Q&A. I think we need water. If you don't mind, please, can we have water on the podium for the guest speakers? So I will invite Mr. Bamidele Ayemibo to come over and take over the question and answer sessions. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. And the guest speakers too. The guest speakers too, please. I want to humbly invite you to take your seats. Madam, they are bringing water so that you can refresh yourself. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Bamidele, you can take over. Thank you.
All right. All right, thank you very much. We've had very fantastic presentation. The first talking about the investment already being done in the sector, and also the second showing a lot of issues with the value chain and what the work that have been done there. I have a few questions here I'm going to ask them. And for those of us online and those in the audience, you can begin to write down your question and you can pass it across to me. Let me start with Mr. Thomas. What do you think? I mean, it was good that you were part of the people that work on the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. What do you think was the issue? I mean, we've had a number of such documents in Nigeria, and we've not been able to effectively implement them and see the impact in the economy. What do you think is the issue? And what would be your recommendation for the incoming administration? I know the press people are here. Or what we can do differently this time around to be able to ensure we don't just sit down, like you said, when you came up, I mean, that this is not a talk show. We don't just come, write beautiful document and unable to really implement the way we want. Thank you. You can use that.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. The real issue, if I may put it in my own simple way, is implementation. Now, at that ERGP, what interested me was that at my count, I could remember about meeting 8 or 9 state governors and 7 or 8 ministers. So it was a well-articulated program, and a lot came out from it, one of which is also what is driving us as a group, the need to really backward integrate. Not only that, also forward integrate. However, one of the key elements of that, or takeaway from that program, was the issue of land. And as we speak, nothing has been done about that. The Land Use Act is still very defective. I remember partnering, our organization partnered with a state. We allocated land to crop cassava under one trade organization. And it was about the time the governor was about to exit office. So as a group, we had a plan B as investors. And we're watching them. They allocated the land, gave us a C of O. But they were in a hurry by virtue of the tenure of administration winding down. And they thought we were a group that would just invest without enough research. So in the course of our investment and feasibility studies, we found out that the sector of the land they were giving to us is between a border community land. So we expected that there will be community issues. By slowing down, it paid us. However, before they could leave some few days to the expiration of the tenure of the governor, they revoked the land. So we just felt
it was good if not
we went
investing.
back on our plan B. And this is an investment that was not going to cost us anything less than $20 million. So you can imagine if you had deployed your site layout, your OEMs, your equipment manufacturer had deployed the site layout in this regard, you would have been in a big soup. You can imagine if you had, gotten funding either by way of a grant or by way of an intervention, Windows support, and then you need to pay back interest. And so, back to what I started with, the problem is implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Mr. Thomas, please. Yeah, Madam, I've had speak about this in a couple of events. The last one was at, I think it was Covenant Nation in Lekki here. We both on the panel, if I remember. But remember you mentioned this issue around this grant. What do you think is the challenge that hinder Nigerian businesses from really getting the grant? Because you always talk about the fact that it's available, the fund is there, but not so many. Of course, I know a number of companies are able to get it, but what do you think? What will you advise the listeners? What can we begin to do different to be able to access this grant?
Thank you so much. I would say there are three things. Number one is we have to tell our stories better. Packaging. You tell a story about opportunities. You tell a story about why you're uniquely equipped to fulfill that role. And you also tell a story about the impact you're going to have. And the stories have to be rooted in integrity. So don't make up stories, right? But storytelling is important.
That's verifiable stories.
Yes, we often say our work will speak for us, but in the world it doesn't work that way.
We have to
Do you understand? There's no major investment that anybody has made without having a picture of what the future looks like and what will come out of that investment. The second is governance. You have to have strong governance. People don't invest in individuals, they invest in companies, right? They want to know that the founder has a track record, but they also want to know that there's a board to hold that founder accountable. Nobody wants to give you $15 million and tomorrow you've used it to build a house and you disappear. And I can tell you many people have disappeared, right? They change their email address, nobody can find them after they've gotten the money. So that transparency and accountability, governance is important. And then the third is there has to be an exit strategy. No one wants to put in, even a grant, they want to know that when they leave you, you're stronger for it. Or if they've given you an investment in either a loan or equity or whatever, that there's an exit. They don't want to know that they're going to be supporting you for the rest of your life or that they're going to regret giving you money versus someone else. There's competition. So we have to do a lot around building credibility. And that's one of the reasons I started Africa Food Change Makers, to help entrepreneurs position themselves to get this money, but also to ensure that they know they belong to a community where they'll be held accountable for how they utilize the funding. And I tell you repeatedly, there are companies in Nigeria getting millions of dollars in grants in the agriculture and food landscape. And some are doing very well, and some have questionable approaches. But even organizations we celebrate like Babangona, like AFEX, have gotten a lot of grant funding, a lot. So you can use grant funding to scale your business. And there are opportunities. I know the UK has the UK Growth Gateway. They recently spoke to our entrepreneurs. So there are a number of UK interventions that are coming into the ag space as well, and we need to take advantage of them.
All right. As a follow-up to that, you deal a lot with smallholders in the value chain. What are the challenges you faced, and how did you overcome it? In dealing with you're investing in the space, you're working with these smallholder farmers, to be able to build scale, like Mr. Tomo was talking about the fact that it needs a lot of farmers in the cassava space to be able to produce it and all. So how have you been able to, what are the challenges actually, and have you been able to overcome those challenges?
So I'll say there are three main challenges. The number one is we have to put our farmers into clusters. Nobody can work with individual farmers. We actually have to put them into groups. And in Nigeria, we don't have a lot of groups. In parts of, if you go to Francophone Africa, they have very established cooperatives and associations. In Nigeria, you have to put them into groups, and there have to be a reason for them to stay in that group. So they're getting training, they're getting support. So in the dairy project, we've called them self-help groups. And we train them, they name themselves, they become members. And then as they grow, they can actually become cooperatives. And when they become cooperatives, then you can actually give them financing, right? They become a legal entity. So that's one. We don't work in groups, and we need to, because economies of scale, sharing resources, sharing a borehole, sharing a tractor. No smallholder farmer can afford to have a tractor just by themselves if they have 2 acres of land. The second is literacy and education and training. You know, our extension worker ratio is 1 extension worker to 900 farmers. There are farmers who have never seen an extension worker the whole year. Now, the best practice is 1 extension worker to about 300 farmers. In Nigeria, our extension workers and extension system is a cake, and it needs to be dismantled. So we have had to create a private sector extension work where we give motorcycles and bicycles to extension workers. We give them cell phones. They can upload data. We train them, and then they can train the farmer. Because the farmer needs the latest and greatest information on seeds, on crop protection products, on fertilizer, etc. And if they don't see anybody to train them for a whole year, that's a lost opportunity, right? So extension support, training, literacy. And then the third is access to markets and access to financing. And that's an investment opportunity. Many of our farmers don't have bank accounts. Many of our farmers are not part of the ecosystem where they get data every day saying the price of your cocoa is this. Is selling in Lagos. Let me give you an example. When we did our first tomato study, we found out that farmers in Kano were selling their baskets of tomato for 300 naira. And it was, by the time it got to Lagos, it was 3,000 naira. That's when tomato is in season, right? When it's out of season, it's 30,000 naira, you can get a basket. So where is the money between the market woman in Lagos and the farmer? The farmer is not getting any of that money. So if there's transparency, there's access to markets, there's market linkages, you ensure that the farmer gets more of the money. So Ace Foods, we buy from farmers, right? We've worked with the same farmers for years. They are facing insecurity, they are facing all sorts of, but they want to get money. They need to get the money that they're working so hard for. So let's reduce the number of middlemen and create of information as dissemination and transparency and accountability so we empower them. They want to get out of poverty and we have to help them go up that ladder.
Thank you very much. Put hands together for her, please. Before I go to the audience, you mentioned, I'm assuming based on what you said that you do a lot of shipment to West Africa for your ethanol. Yes, you mentioned challenges specifically in West Africa, and you mentioned about exchange, repatriation of the fund. What are the challenges, other challenges beyond that? I know you have to move by road or you move by sea. I know by sea, probably the vessel will have to go to Europe and then come back. So what are the challenges and how are you managing that for the purpose of those that are listening to you?
Thank you very much. Some of those challenges, you don't want to imagine them. Until recently, we are all familiar with the port congestion in Apapa. There was a time we needed to export to Ghana, and we loaded our consignment. It took 3 months within Lagos to get to Apapa. And then when we're done, of course, like you rightly also identified, the shipload had to go outside of the country and then come back all the way, and so on and so on. So time loss. If you go by road, infrastructure gaps. Our roads are between there and the border is something, but after the border, it's okay. So we now begin to ask ourselves, what is the problem? Must we continue that route as a business? Then, on the other hand, the repatriation. The question is, you have all your documentation right, but just for you to get a refund, it's not just coming. And so you can't keep running a cycle that probably is affecting you. Rather, you want to also think differently and then innovate. So when all these were not working, we had to start thinking of how to innovate. And in a way, it paid off. Because eventually, with the crisis the Sahel is having, including West Africa now, it's something that one needs to be very careful about. If you are going to export with the issues that borders on foreign exchange problems that some of these countries are also having. So we are about to take cognizance of this and also look inward that as a country, our population is growing. And what is driving West Africa?
It's Nigeria.
It's Nigeria. Thank you. So if Nigeria is driving West Africa, why would I want to kill myself trying to go outside Nigeria when inside Nigeria itself I'm not able to, meet the demand gap, with my supply? The supply demand gap, dichotomy is still hanging in the air. So in addressing this, we also need to be careful about the statistics that are out there. You need to interrogate them. You need to engage them. You need to be sure. And interactions like this actually go a long way to also give reason to some investment or need for some investment in line with what indeed they had already also emphasized, with all other smallholder, small scale approach, to mining value in the value chain. So I'll put it that way for now. Thank you.
All right. So one question for both of you. Are you open to contract manufacturing? You have already mastered the production, the value chain. By contract manufacturing, I'm looking at individuals who would like to buy from you. I'm talking about Ace Food, what you produce, to be able to sell either in their company name or maybe as a merchant, but they are looking at investing in international market, but they want to be buying from you. What's your take on that?
Okay, fine. Contract manufacturing, we are open to it as a group. As we speak, we have a 200 tons refinery at Apapa. Now, when we built that refinery, the idea then under the CBN window was that you could open from M and bring in vegetable oil.
Okay.
So we built a refinery funded by CBN intervention
fund
window. When we finished building it,
they brought in the 41 item.
And then they cancelled it. So when they cancelled it, what other options do you have? We thought, okay, let us now go into branding. And in sustaining our brand, we also find out that we keep saying red oil is everywhere, red oil is everywhere. The gap is huge. The demand-supply gap is huge. So we went into branding, we call it family oil. And then we discovered that the capacity we have can also accommodate contract manufacturing.
Okay.
So some other brands come, and then we package for them, and then they promote their own brand.
But at the end of the day, it's win-win for
and
both.
It's win-win for and at the end of the day, you can make some money. Because as an investor, what you keep thinking
to maximize
is the bottom line. Because it doesn't make sense when you go to the board and they say, okay, what have you brought for us? And you are telling stories. They're going to kick you out. Nobody cares. So to that extent, you want to be sure that all your investments are actually maximizing value. So to that extent, we are open to third-party and contract manufacturing as the case might be.
Madam, how about Ace Food?
So we actually have been doing that historically.
Fantastic.
We have. And we do a lot of B2B. 80% of our business is business-to-business sales.
Okay.
A lot of our multinationals were importing ginger, turmeric, chili. They didn't know that they could find locally sourced, high-quality alternatives, and we've basically displaced their import revenue.
Okay.
And we do that for
some... Of course,
that
would say them foreign exchange.
Yes, and we do that for some international customers as well who want to sell their own slightly modified products, but we package it in Nigeria.
Fantastic. Let's now together for our panelists, please. So let me say questions that you have for our speakers, both online. I don't know if there are questions online. Okay, yes, one. Any other one? 2, 3. Let's start with one, please.
Hello, my name is Barry Adalemo. I see that both speakers have, should I say, seemingly different approaches to this topic. I think the approaches are actually a bit, should I say, diametrically opposed. Ndidi is speaking ethically, Thomas is speaking commercially. Yeah. So Thomas has said a lot about large-scale farming, cassava, palm oil. We know that these two products essentially affect the environment. Do you feel that, and I use this term loosely, the exploitation of cassava and palm oil, the way it's produced, you said you need about 10,000 farmers clearing large expanses of land, which we know creates erosion, global warming. And then also, what is more important to me is that it seems that the price of cassava has really gone up because of the production of ethanol. at the end of the day, are you really contributing to the bottom line of Nigeria? Are you really helping food security in Nigeria by exploiting palm oil and especially cassava, thereby increasing food prices? Like I said, Ndidi is talking more ethically. I can see that.
By exporting, right?
Yes, by producing, you're exploiting, you're producing ethanol, which is not to be eaten, it's fuel. Cassava, the price of cassava has gone up clearly because
demand.
The demand for ethanol, for starch, pharmaceutical grade starch. People are going hungry as a result of the exploitation of cassava. The price of it's more profitable to produce cassava, to produce fuel, than for people to eat. And Ndidi is talking about feeding children, looking at the face of mothers in Africa. Is someone solving a problem and someone else contributing to the problem, and both sat on this panel? And so I'd like you to explain to us how
the impact, basically the social impact of the business. Let's take all the panel together because of time. Number 2. No, here. 2 and 3 on this. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Michael. By the way, that's my MD that just asked the question right now. All right, so I'm more into finance.
Okay.
So when Ndidi mentioned climate financing, I was very interested. She mentioned she met someone. Was it Thailand? Was it Thailand you mentioned? Okay. So you talked about they're producing clean stove. I actually worked with a company that produces clean stoves before I joined my new company. So now in the agricultural space, I'm interested in knowing ways we can actually, even about carbon credits. I'm interested in knowing how carbon credits can be incorporated into, or if it is already been incorporated into agricultural investment, agricultural business.
Question 3.
Thank you. My name is Asevo. I'm a data consultant. So a few years ago, I spoke to someone and he said to me, the problem with Africa, agriculture in Africa is still seen as very subsistence. So somebody at the back, trying to farm vegetables. I was at Rome for a burial last week, and I still saw, a man and the son frying gari or whatever. And I was like, after 20 years. So what are we doing to help the people understand that, agriculture is actually a very big opportunity? Thank you.
All right. Online, I have a question. How can we get your book? This online, so we won't be able to pick it up here. If there are bookshops where they can pick it up, then it's another question to you. How can Ms. Ndidi assist upcoming farmers in Nigeria, especially those into processing of perishable farm produce and export business into international markets? Okay, so let me start with you.
Okay, thank you for the questions, and then just to provide some clearance. When we talk about ethanol, for the first question, we're talking about food-grade ethanol. I'm sure during the COVID era, there's nobody who wasn't using hand sanitizer. 60%, 70% of that is coming from ethanol. Your spirit, whether alcoholic beverages, part of it is still ethanol. So just to put that in proper perspective. Now, the other concern, which is, now that we are sourcing it from from cassava.
Gari is getting expensive.
We know that gari is a staple fruit. And if you are going to depend on cassava production from the local farmers, we already know that over 90% of that is to gari. And then the other one is, which one? Fufu and all those stuff. But what we are doing as an organization is to empower, localities so that local governments can see benefits from farming cassava, which is a food crop and annually you can actually get 2 yields from it. So to that extent, if you have improved breed, currently I think there is one that IIT researched into, the TM419, that you crop the input material, and then the yield can actually give you between 20 to 25 tons per hectare. And the starch content is also very high, because what we actually need is the water that you juice away. So to that extent, we are actually contributing to enhancing and empowering farmers under the in-growers and out-growers scheme. We give you the planting materials, you crop. We give you all the support you need, and then we also offtake.
So you create the market.
So we offtake. In a way, it's like you are farming for us and creating a value chain, which is a win-win for the local communities who have had all this land seated there over the years, doing nothing with it. Again, if you try to buy off the land from them, they will say it's their father's, great-grandfather's inheritance. So why don't you farm your land? I will offtake from you, and then it can be a win-win for all. Then on the aspect of the environment being sustainable, I just spoke that there is need to invest in the waste treatment plant. It doesn't come cheap at all. Ditto for the oil palm sector. These days, even the current sitting big players of oil palm in Nigeria, they're also having issues with exporting their products because they are not RSPO certified. So these days, if you are going to go into a big-time oil palm plantation, you have to be RSPO certified from the beginning of your nursery. So we have had to engage them as a corporate and then, run along with them in that regard so that at the end of the day, our yield will be such that will be, marketable. So looking at this, I want to believe that in a way, what we are trying to do is actually to bring in more small holders farm, encourage more small holders farm, encourage some large, farms too, and then also create huge opportunities for those who are willing to go into the agric space, as against what over the years, wasn't there. The output most times will rot or waste, as the case might be. But when you have huge processors in the mix, then you are sure and confident that if you crop, you are sure somebody will offtake, and then the value chain continues on and on. I hope I've been able to clarify your understanding in that regard.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, yeah, we're rounding off. Just for her to, in addition to the question, just add one thing. Why is Nigeria finding it difficult to export soya beans, even though the demand is much more than many other commodities? I know the price is an issue, but I don't know what is the issue in the value chain. Thank you.
Okay, so just quickly on that, we still import about 40% of the soya beans we need.
Yeah.
We can't actually meet demand. The biggest off-takers for soya bean are the poultry industry. So that's directly affecting...
Okay, the pricing.
Yes, the pricing.
Demand.
The poultry industry cannot get enough. Neither can the fish feed industry. So there's tremendous demand for soya.
Okay.
Now, so the book is available online on Africa Food Changemakers website, afchub.org. You can download it. I love that you asked that question. Keep holding big business accountable to do the right thing. Because honestly, a lot of companies in Nigeria get away with actually hurting the environment because they can get away with it in our ecosystem. So I love your response, but I think these type of questions need to keep coming. In terms of smallholder farmers, the truth is I'm as frustrated as you. Really. We need to move many of our micro subsistence farmers out of the sector into paid employment because some of them really didn't have a choice, right? This is the only available opportunity. Some of them who are ready to be entrepreneurs should move from being micro to small, small to medium, medium to large. And they can grow with Ace Foods, they can grow with NOSAC, based on their mindset, based on their hunger, based on their appetite. The challenge in our ecosystem is that we continue to have failed policies that are quite archaic. I was the chair of the Policy Commission Vision 2050 for Agricultural Rural Development. And when I listen to some of the things that people say in our public sector, I'm stunned. Because they have benefited from saying, let's give seeds to farmers, let's give fertilizer. Do you understand? Let's bring a tractor. The last administration imported 500 tractors from Brazil. Is it the Ministry of Agriculture's role when there are tractor owners associations that want to rent out tractors? So you've imported them. Who's going to fuel them? Who's going to maintain them? When they rust under the sun somewhere, they're done. So why do you think they imported 500 tractors? Was it because they cared about our smallholder farmers? And most of our smallholder farmers, you can't even use a tractor on their land because there are trees in between the lands, their houses. Do you understand? We know how the topography is in most of our communities. So we need to hold our governments accountable because they perpetuate this. And also our development organizations. So trust me, I hear you, and we are working on this. We are. That's what Sahel Consulting does in all the value chains. And we are bringing in seed systems. We work on the basics project with IITA to actually double and triple our yields. And then in terms of climate financing, please, my brother, enroll for the BRACE program. It starts next month. It's free. It's a 6-week online course on climate and financing. So you get, I say entrepreneurs don't have the time, like your CEO, the staff can enroll in the program, and you self-paced. So please, we have world-class experts who are doing this for free to engage with you. We want our people to take advantage of climate financing and carbon credits. I am not an expert on this, but we've brought together experts. So please do enroll. BRACE, and you find it on the AFC Hub website. We also have a program for the person online on export, helping our products, our entrepreneurs export, and it's also a free program. So please do enroll. So free advertising for a nonprofit, and I'm not on the payroll of any of these organizations. So I do have a desire to see the change in the sector. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I have to run. It's been really good engaging with you all. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, what an insightful start to the morning, and it's got us all thinking. Even those of us with little gardens with our spinach and kale, there's a way forward. So my duty is really to give the vote of thanks and announcements. On behalf of the chamber, I'd like to thank the speakers, Mr. Thomas Olori Egbe. Group, if I've said it wrong, please pardon me. Group Managing Director, NOSAC Group, Mr. Ndidi O. Nwuneli, who's left. Thank you so much. Co-founder, Sahel Consulting, Agriculture and Nutrition Limited. Mr. Bamidele Ayemibo, I think he's doctor, because I have PhD here, Chief Executive Officer, 3T Impex Consulting Limited. Patrons and council members, our sponsors, Cresceda International Limited, Red Star Limited, Red Star Express. Ladies and gentlemen, the Agric and Export Trade Group, headquarters for this event. Our upcoming events are this month as follows. We have an expert in residence program scheduled for May 16, 2023 on Zoom at 10 a.m. and participation is free. The NBCC breakfast meeting is scheduled for Thursday, May 18. Please, you're invited to participate. We'll have more details on our social media and website. 2023 trade mission to the UK, visiting London and Birmingham, is scheduled for May 21 to 27 this year. Interested individuals and corporates are invited to participate. The plaza is open with state-of-the-art facilities for you to explore for your corporate events, trainings, seminars, and meetings at affordable rates. You can reach out to the chamber to make inquiries and reservations. We would love your feedback. I think the barcode should be on the screen. If it comes up, please, scan it and fill out a feedback form. Are we having the barcode? Yes? Thank you. If you're interested in becoming a member of the chamber, please visit our website on www.nbcc.org.ng. Finally, please follow us on social media to be informed of all our activities. We're on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good rest of the day.
Advantage. Logistics is key for many businesses all over the world. Over the last few years, the number of specialist companies in the logistics industry has risen to 250 in Nigeria alone. So why should you choose Red Star Express PLC? Red Star Express PLC offers a wide range of services from domestic and international deliveries to freight services, outsourcing services, e-commerce solutions, printing and packaging, e-archiving, as well as agro-logistics and trade. We deliver to over 1,500 communities in Nigeria and over 200 countries worldwide. We have offices all over Nigeria with international offices in Niger Republic, Burkina Faso, and the Benin Republic. We offer visibility for all packages on the move, so you know the status of your packages while they are being delivered. Red Star Express PLC is quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange and has been so since 2007. Looking for the perfect logistics partner for your business? Look no further than Red Star Express PLC. Red Star Express PLC, beyond expectations. The Red Star Advantage. Logistics is key for many businesses all over the world. Over the last few years, the number of specialist companies in the logistics industry has risen to 250 in Nigeria alone. So why should you choose Red Star Express PLC? Red Star Express PLC offers a wide range of services from domestic and international deliveries to freight services, outsourcing services, e-commerce solutions, printing and packaging, e-archiving, as well as agro-logistics and trade. We deliver to over 1,500 communities in Nigeria and over 200 countries worldwide. We have offices all over Nigeria with international offices in Niger Republic, Burkina Faso, and the Benin Republic. We offer visibility for all packages on the move, so you know the status of your packages while they are being delivered. Red Star Express PLC is quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange and has been so since 2007. Looking for the perfect logistics partner for your business? Look no further than Red Star Express PLC. Red Star Express PLC, beyond expectations.